Alright, now that we have the basic geometry of the rim complete, we need to go ahead and create some of the other elements that will make this look like a convincing wheel. Things like the brake caliper, which you can see over here, the brake disc, maybe some of these screws that are in the background, and the tire. So let's start building those. Now, a quick word to the wise or to anybody who's been paying attention to this video for this long. We are not going to go into a whole lot of detail on the brake caliper. If you'd like, you can go ahead and look up a diagram for that and put as much effort into it as you like. We're going to keep things relatively simple for that. Now, before we really get into all of this, if I switch over to the high res, it looks like the rim kind of goes in a little bit and then ends right inside here. I'd like to at least give the illusion that the rim goes all the way into the other side of the tire, more like it would in the real world. So what I'm going to do is grab all of these edges all around the inside of the wheel. So you'll notice I'm grabbing all these borders. It'll take a second to get all of these. And the room gets eerily quiet while I select. Okay. And all of these. And all of these. Whoops, grabbed one too many. Okay, that's everybody. So with those, shift, right mouse, and extrude these edges. Now I'll switch over to world coordinates on my extrusion, and we'll slide these back. So that actually is going to create some thickness. Now a couple of things. First of all, if I start looking around the other side of my rim, you can't really see too much because this image plane is going to keep getting in your way. You can hide cameras if you want to. What I'm going to do is go to object mode, select the image plane, and we'll go over to its center X attribute. And we'll just slide the thing way, way back out of our way. Second, because this is transparent and now we have all of these overlapping polygons, it may be a little tricky to see what's going on. So to make your lives easier, that's right, I do it all for you, we're going to come over here to the attribute editor, and let's see, clicky, clicky, clicky. Let's grab our Lambert 2. I'll kill off its transparency, so now it's nice and opaque, and you can see what we've done. We've added some thickness, but if we come over to the smooth version of the model, it's this weird segmented thickness, which will not help us very much. So, let's go back over to our low res by hitting the tilde key. What I'm going to do is hold down Shift, right mouse, and grab the Append to Polygon tool, and we will append straight across each one of these little gaps to sort of fill in the difference. Now, you do not need to extend this all the way to where the rim would actually end. You're going to find that it's going to be pretty much impossible for the audience to see all the way up into the wheel. Unless you plan on taking the wheel off at some point. Now, this looks cool, but it also looks like it has all these flattened spots on it, so we'll need to kind of round those out. In order to round those out, we need a little more detail, because these are these big, flat planes. So I'll hold down Shift, right mouse again. We'll grab the, not the Append to Polygon tool, but the Split Polygon tool this time. Now let's double check my settings. I want to make sure that Snap to Magnets is on, one magnet is great, and 100% tolerance. So I'll split all of these faces in half. Just lay down a split, right mouse, and continue all the way around very fast. Dun, 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 dun. And one more. Kaboom. Excellent. Now, to round this out, you can cheat just a little bit. And by cheating, I mean this is not maybe the most elegant way to do this, but it works well. Grab all of these edges, get your scale tool, and very gently scale these all away from each other. And you'll notice that that rounds the thing out quite well. Now, look at this. You still have some gaps here at the back of the rim. We are not worried about that. The audience will never see that. As far as the audience is concerned, this is a nice, completed, very happy-looking rim. So from here, let's create the brake disc next. That sounds like fun. Brake disc is fairly simple. We're going to start off with a polygon pipe. Notice I grabbed that out of my shelf. Let me go back to my channel box so you guys can see a nice big viewport. We'll rotate this pipe 90 degrees. Not in X. I didn't mean that. You guys just saw. I was testing all of you. We'll set this to rotate Z 90 degrees. And so that turns it on its side. Let's pull it out here where everybody can see it too. Now, here's the thing. You want to make this big enough so that it looks like about the size of the rim. Stop looking at the picture. Just look at your rim for a minute. In fact, let's go to show, and let's switch off cameras. So now I know everybody's looking at what I want them to see. You're going to need enough room where you can fill the brake caliper in over here. So if you make it like this big, that's bad. And if you make it this small, that's bad too. So find a nice middle ground. No, it doesn't have to be super precise. Just look at a couple of pictures like, well, we could look at maybe a picture like this. Now, this is an entirely different rim, but there you go with the brake disc. You can see it. Now, let's take our thickness, and I'll pull it back a little bit. So probably something right about in here will work out well. But this is kind of segmented. I mean, even if we view this from a distance, it looks just a little bit too segmented to be nice and clean. Now, hang on real quick. Let me flatten this out by scaling in Y so it gets about the thickness of a nice brake disc. And we'll take our subdivisions axis and crank this up to a nice, wholesome number, something that has a deep meaning. How about 42? Now everybody can... Yeah. Anyways, let's grab this edge here and this edge here. Notice I'm only grabbing edges on the front of the disc. I'm going to bevel these to make this look a little cleaner. But I'm not going to bevel the inside. That'll just create unnecessary faces, because who's ever going to see the inside of that? So let's hold down the space bar. We'll go to Edit Polygons, Selection, and grab Select Contiguous Edges. Kaboom. Shift right mouse, bevel edge. And that's not bad. Let's go ahead and maybe pull the offset in just a little bit. Take our segments, set them up to 2. And if I deselect and have a look at that, that should look very nice and clean all the way around. I'm digging it, but the difference between this and what's there in the real world is this is a ported brake disc. It means it's got all these little tiny holes all over it to help it get more suction, a better grip. So we need to create these holes. Now, this is an area where it's easy for you, the modeler, to get carried away. Don't do that. Take just a second and look at your picture, and we can see maybe like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4... 4 different sets of holes in each 1/5 circle. Let's say maybe if there were 6 and 6 total in this area, we multiply that by 5. We get about 30 rows of holes around the thing. Ballpark it. You don't have to sit there and count up every single hole unless you just really, really want to. So we'll create a cylinder to make this hole, and I will rotate this cylinder on Z, the Z-axis, 90 degrees. And we'll slide it over in X. Now, this cylinder is clearly way too big to make an effective hole. That would be one ported brake disc. So let's make it small, something we can use. If I come over here to the side view, and let's go to wireframe, and let me make this a low res by hitting the tilde key, and let's go to show and bring cameras back online. Now I can grab this, we'll move it somewhere here. Now notice this is not lined up with the image. We know already that the image was kind of shot at an interesting elevation, and because this is back up inside the rim, things will not line up the way we wanted to, so don't let that bother you. We'll scale this down so it's about the same size as one of these holes. And I recommend, because you get so close in here to the pixel level, make this small enough to fit inside those pixels. If you scale it up so that it kind of encompasses those pixels, it's going to end up looking too big. So we'll scale it down to something about like that. And we need to scale it out in Y so it's a nice peg. Make sure it runs all the way through the disc. Now it has 20 faces all around the outside. You do not need that many. Remember, nobody's going to be having a camera angle that's right up here on the brake disc. So simplify this. Let's try setting it down to 10. I usually find that a setting of 8 is just a little too chunky for my personal taste. So we'll set this down to 10. And let's line this up with 3 of the holes. Now, check it out. We're kind of off kilter here with the original disc, but the original disc needs to be kind of slid back a little bit. Maybe real quick, let's grab this and pull back on the thickness, and that'll probably be a little closer to what's actually there. I think my disc was just a little bit too thick. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll pull this down, and we'll hit Shift-D, pull it up 1, and hit Shift-D again, so we have that. 3 little cylinders all the way around. Now I'm going to select all 3 of these, hit Control-G to group them all. Now, we said we were going to have 30 rows all the way around. We know that we need to go 360 degrees. 30 into 360 is 12. So, let's hit Shift-D. We'll take Rotate X and set it to 12, like so. Middle click over here in the viewport and hit Shift-D several times until we march all the way around the disk. And it looks like we have a slight problem. Does everybody see that problem? Problem is that our pegs are starting to get a little bit malaligned, and let's see if we can figure out why. So we'll undo all of this. It looks like my group is a little bit off kilter. Maybe my group got moved at some point. So let's see. Let's undo. Let me hit Control-G again. And let me check my pivot point. Make sure it is indeed at the center. It doesn't look like it is, does it? Now this is only moved in X. So here's what I'm going to do. If you ever run into a situation like this and things are a little bit off, what you can do is select your main object. In this case, the object we're going to be revolving around, so to speak. We'll go to Display, Component Display, and we'll show the local rotation axis for this object. This is its center, which is exactly what we need in this case. Now, let's grab all three of these pegs once again, hit Control-G. Now what I'm going to do is hit Insert. We'll move the pivot point of this group, and I will point snap it to that local rotation axis. Now it is right in the center of the brake disc, exactly where we want it. So now I can hit Shift-D, take Rotate X, set it to 12 degrees, press Enter, and then hit Shift-D, was it 30 times or 29 times technically, until we go all the way around the disc, like so. Let's grab all of these pegs all at once. Shift right mouse, and I need to make sure that I'm off to the side here. Make sure, yeah, there we go. I'll just get the space bar, and let's go to polygons and combine these all into a single polygon object. I missed some. Undo. Make sure you get all these pegs. There we go. Space bar, polygons, combine, like so. Now I'll select my disk. Select all of these pegs, spacebar, edit, delete by type, kill off that history, first thing. Now I should be able to just shift right mouse, and here's Booleans, difference. Give it a second, and there you go. Instant ported brake disc for your viewing pleasure. Now I recommend at this point you go to Modify, center your pivot up, then go to Display, Component Display, and switch off that local rotation axis because it gets on my nerves. And, we don't have it yet. We need to delete our history. Edit, delete by type history. Make sure we get rid of any extra shape nodes that we may have had. Now let's switch off that local rotation axis. It's because it actually had a separate object being calculated there. The old pipe that we created originally to make the disk itself still had its shape node, so we still saw that local rotation axis. So we could slide this back and out of the way, and if you get it back in there far enough, it's going to look just like the brake disc, which is very nice. If you need to make any adjustments to its size, don't be afraid to scale it up or down at will. Now, in this particular picture, it'll be best to judge the size of this by going left to right, because it looks like we're centered up pretty much in this direction. So if we go from left to right, that's about correct. And in my case, that's 0.953 uniform scale. Now, we do still need to create a brake caliper. So temporarily, let me pull this back out here where we can still work with it. And I'll start off by creating a cube. And I'm going to scale this up, kind of get it into the general position of this caliper. Like so. Now I'm just going to be roughing this in. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time detailing this into something really complex. Let's go over to our Polycube 1 input node, take subdivision's height, and in this case I'll crank it up to 3. You'll notice if you look really closely, there's kind of a, and maybe a little hard to see, there's a little bit of an indentation in the general shape around this. And actually, maybe take that subdivision's width, set it up to 4. That way we actually have an edge here in the middle that I could scale down in Z and actually create that pinching. We'll grab the top and bottom sets of vertices. We'll scale those in slightly. Now let's go back over to object mode. And I'll grab the split edge ring tool. I'm going to make sure this is in absolute mode. Absolute, close the window. And we'll click once, click twice. I just want to create a ridge down the middle of this. Whoops, there we go. Now, I'm going to take the edges here that are a little bit too long, and we'll scale those in until these two internal edges kind of straighten out. I'll take these vertices here at either end. We'll scale those out until these edges kind of straighten all the way down, like so. Now we'll grab all of these faces, and let me undo real quick. There we go. Let's extrude these, so let's frame up on them. Pull out. Now there's kind of a, if we take a look over here, in fact, here's an interesting shot of a yellow one, if it'll help out a little bit. We have sort of a flattened area that goes around this whole thing. So to create that, let's grab all the vertices here on one side. We'll pull these up like so. Switch over and select faces. I'm going to get all the faces along the bottom. And let's extrude those just a little bit. And then I'll scale these outward in X a tad. Scale them up a little bit in Y. Let's grab those resultant vertices here that are pinched in that hourglass configuration. And we'll scale those apart slightly. Let's go back to faces, and let's go into wireframe, make it a little easier to see all of these. We're going to select all those faces on the bottom once again. So we'll grab all of those, and all of these, like so. And let's extrude those. We'll just pull them in World X. Now, if I were to hit Control tilde on this, here's what you get on your smooth version. And really, in most cases, that's going to be enough to get you by. Maybe I can grab these edges up here, and we'll scale these in, because this is not a main area of attraction, so to speak, in the model that I'm creating. If on your version you'd like to spend a little more time on the brakes, that's totally cool. I'm going to keep this relatively simple in my case. And there we go. It's just something that I can put a material on so that everybody can see how the brake actually looks. I think I'm going to scale it up just a little bit, and we'll tug it outward. Now we can take the caliper and the brake disc, slide those back inside the wheel. Now our brake, if we look at the picture, is not straight up and down. It's not exactly on the side, so we need to offset that a little bit. To do that, I'm just going to group it and then rotate that group slightly, and that'll kind of offset it very well for us. We also have another disc to which the brake itself is attached that's got some bolts that you can see in 5 little places all the way around the edge there. We'll create that out of a separate pipe. Just make a pipe. I'll drag it out here where you guys can see it. Let's rotate this in Z 90 degrees. Scale this out just so it fits inside the brake disc itself. We'll go ahead and take the subdivisions around the axis and set that to 42 as well, so everything kind of syncs up. Adjust our thickness accordingly. Let's go back over here to our perspective. We'll flatten this out. Slide it back just behind the brake disc, like so. Now we need some bolts that we can put on it, and the quickest way to make a bolt, as you guys already know, is to create a cylinder. Again, we will rotate it in Z 90 degrees. We'll go into polycylinder 1, set the number of subdivisions around the axis to 6, like so. Shrink this way down, make it all nice and tiny. Subdivision caps we can set to 0 for the time being. Let's frame up on this object. I'll grab, actually I can probably get away with grabbing all of the edges in this particular case, and we'll bevel these edges, pull back on that offset so it doesn't look like a rounded bolt. Go back to object mode, and what I'm going to do is just slide this straight up. In fact, hang on, if I slide it straight down, we can just kind of mathematically place all of this. So there's one. If I hit 5, you can see it. Let's group it to itself, and then I'll hit Shift-D, and what is 1/5 of 360? Isn't it something like 72? So let's go to Rotate X, set this to 72 degrees. There it is. Shift-D, 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 boom, boom, boom. And then I'll real quickly come around, grab all of these, press the up arrow key, edit, ungroup, just to get rid of those unnecessary group nodes. And really, that is going to take care of that. Now, let's create a tire to finalize this whole thing, and then I think we'll pretty much be done. Tire is a lot easier than it looks for starters, just to create the geometry. Now, any other parts of the tire that you want to create, like, if you want a logo on it, if you need like the 245, 35 ZR18s along the side, that's going to be a texture and or displacement or bump map, depending on how you want to handle that. Therefore, the geometry of the tire itself really only needs to be very simple. So what I'm going to do is come in here to a front view, and let's make sure that I'm in the low-res version. I'm going to take just a second and grab all of these odd vertices, and let's snap those in the x-axis so they're all nice and straight. You don't really have to do that. It's just for those of us like me who are a little bit, crazy and anal about what we're modeling. Now, I'm going to hold down the space bar. Let's go to Create. I'll grab the CV Curve tool, and we'll just draw a curve. Actually, let's make sure that this is straight over. So hold down Shift, click, click, call it even right there. Now, you want this curve to be the same height as the tire, and you just drew this arbitrarily if you were following along with me. So now come in here and grab Control Vertices and pull this down and adjust so it's the same height as your tire, give or take. If it's off by a little bit, nobody will know again. Now, you can take this, and let's take our pivot point, press Insert, we'll curve snap it to the inside of the tire, like so. We'll duplicate this curve and set the scale of this duplicated curve in the X direction to -1. So now we get an exact copy of the curve over here. Now we'll take the two of these curves together, edit curves, and let's go to Attach. It looks like that worked out just fine. The next thing you should do is delete history on those curves. So now I have this one curve that goes all the way around. Come back over to your curve. And what I'm going to do is press Insert and move the pivot of the curve right to the center of the rim. So notice, point snap, boom, right there, like so. And if you haven't caught on yet, I'm sure you will in just a second. We're going to hold down the space bar, go over to Surfaces, Revolve, and look at our options. We want to revolve in the x-axis, 360 degrees. Segments of 8 is not bad, but I don't know, 16 would probably be better. Revolve, instant tire. Now, if you need to make any adjustments to the tire, like let's say you don't like the shape of it, maybe you want a little more rounding at the corners, no problem, just do it to your curve, and construction history will take care of the rest. So I can grab, say, this vertex here on top as well as this vertex. If we scale these in together in X, we round out that tire just a little bit. If you need a little more thickness leading out to the edge of the rim, we can grab just these vertices. We can pull these out a little bit in X. Be sure you look at your rim in the smooth version just so you can see where everything is. And there you go. When you're done, when you're completely satisfied with how your tire looks, just delete history and or delete that curve, and all will be taken care of. And really with that, that's everything we really need to create to make this a completely functional wheel for our car. So that is going to wrap it up for this video, and thanks a lot.